Hi, guys. Welcome back. And today we'll be talking about section 6.2, completing the interview process. My last video went a little bit too long, and I wasn't able to upload to YouTube. So we're going to try to buzz through this thing a little bit quicker today. And then you can complete section 6.2 of your notes when we're done with this lecture. So let's get going. Completing the interview process. When we're done talking about this, you should be able to explain how to make a good impression during the interview. And we're going to describe a couple different factors and things that play into that, and describe factors to consider before accepting or even rejecting job offers. Just because you're offered the job doesn't mean you're obligated to accept the job. You need to take a look at a number of different factors to make sure that you're making the most well-informed decision that you can for yourself. So we'll talk about the different types of factors coming up here in just a couple minutes. You can see the key terms there: attitude, follow-up message, informational interview, 99 form, all things that we'll be talking about here during this presentation. Now, during the interview, your attitude that you display during the interview may be critical to getting the job. You need to make sure that you're positive. You're going in there with a good attitude, a good mindset about things. Oftentimes, you don't want to come off as a know-it-all, especially if you're young, especially if you don't have a lot of experience within the industry. The bottom line is you have a lot to learn. And, if you come off kind of with that know-it-all attitude because you maybe have had some training or some education, it oftentimes comes across as, a lack of confidence, or, it can come across as, that you're trying to cover up some insecurities possibly about yourself or your abilities. So make sure that you're positive. Make sure that you're honest when answering the questions, but try not to come across as too much of a know-it-all. Keep your answers brief and to the point. Don't ramble. Have your questions ready to ask when you're invited to do so. We talked about this in the last section. You're going to be given an opportunity to ask questions. There's a number of I call them canned questions that you can ask, like, what shifts might I be working? Would I be working weekends, nights, holidays, etc.? Some questions not to ask. How much am I going to get paid? Remember, research shows that you should have done your research prior to the interview, and you should have a pretty good idea of what the expected salary range is for the position that you're interviewing for. It's appropriate to ask when hiring decisions will be made and whether you will be contacted. Generally, the answer to that question is yes, you will be contacted whether or not you get the job. A good idea to ask is, when those decisions will be made. Oftentimes, when you're looking for a job, you kind of need that position, and you may be interviewing for multiple positions in multiple different companies, and it's you want to have. You don't want to necessarily have to jump on the first offer that comes around. Make sure that you have a good idea of when you can expect decisions to be made on their end, and when you will be contacted about those decisions. It's possible that you could be asked to interview over lunch or dinner, and you need to be prepared for that. That's not an uncommon practice. It does happen, and don't freak out if that's something that a prospective employer asks of you. Make sure that if you are asked over lunch or dinner, that you follow proper etiquette and table manners. Okay, your parents have taught you some very good things about eating, or having lunch. Just be on your, best behavior. Use your best manners. Use your best table etiquette. And the book does show a little diagram of etiquette there, or what the place setting might look like in a restaurant. You can take a look at that. It's on page 140 of your textbook, and it looks something like this. Okay, so go ahead and review that, page 140, table etiquette and place settings. After the interview, send a follow-up letter. Okay, and an example of the follow-up letter can be found on page 141 of your textbook. When you take a look at that, a couple things that I want you to notice. Very short and to the point. I would recommend block style formatting. Again, everything should line up at the left-hand side on the block style formatting. So go ahead and take a look at that example on page 141. They do not use block style formatting. However, again, I recommend it. Take a look at your contact information is at the top, your date, the address information for the business that you're applying for, and just thank them for the opportunity for the interview. All right, so take a look at that format. I'm not going to have you write a follow-up letter necessarily. During this chapter, but I think it's important that you know that, number one, there is something called a follow-up letter, and number two, you should know how to format one should you have to ever write one. You can follow up with a phone call if you do not hear back from the interviewer. All right, so typically they're going to give you a call back, they're going to inform, or an email, but if you don't hear from them after they've told you approximately when you should have heard from them, go ahead and give them a phone call. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be rejected or discouraged if you do not get the job offer right away. That you may have to go through multiple interviews in order to get that job of your dreams. Okay, so if you've missed out on several jobs, so if you've been rejected for multiple jobs, you need to try to figure out why. What part of the process are you not keyed in on? In what part of the interview maybe could you have done better in? That's why it's important. We spoke in the last section about taking notes after you leave the interview. It'll be fresh in your mind. The questions that they asked you will be fresh in your mind. The responses that you gave them will be fresh in your mind. You need to review those things, and where could you have improved on your answers? How can you tailor your answers more toward that prospective employer? Make sure that you're asking what your interviewer seeks in a job candidate. What types of skills and abilities, are they looking for in a prospective candidate? If they do not offer you the position, it's okay to ask them, how can you improve on your skills? Because even though you didn't get a job with them necessarily, another job could potentially open up later on, or another business within the same community or another community may open up, in which you're basically applying for the same or a similar position, just in another location. And so those people might be looking for the same types of skills. Make sure that you ask the interviewer, where can I improve? What can I do to present myself better in order for me to be able to obtain this job? Before you accept a job offer, if you are offered a job, make sure you consider multiple factors. What's the nature of the work? What are the working conditions? Obviously, what's the pay? And then obviously fringe benefits. Fringe benefits is something that's huge when considering whether or not you want to accept the job offer. And I highly suggest you take a look at the fringe benefits section. It's on page 143 of your book. And on page 143, you're going to see multiple different fringe benefits, like insurance. Insurance is a huge topic in our country and around the world. How much you'll be paying for insurance, how much your employer will be paying for insurance, whether or not insurance is actually offered. Those are huge things that you need to take a look at. Paid vacation, sick leave, retirement. What types of retirement programs are they offering? Although you may be young and inexperienced and just entering the workforce, at some point in time you're going to want to retire, and you're going to want to retire comfortably. Bonuses. Are there any types of bonuses? And if there are they? How often are they? Are they yearly bonuses, quarterly bonuses, semi-annual bonuses? What types of goals do you have to reach in order to earn bonuses? Things like that. Take a look at those different types of fringe benefits, because oftentimes you can accept a position with a little bit lower salary if their fringe benefits are really, really good. And conversely, you might be getting a really great salary, but the fringe benefits just might not be there. And you have to consider all those different options and what's going to be best for you and what's going to be best ultimately for your family. If you're going to accept the job offer, obviously let the interviewer know as soon as you possibly can. Try to find out everything you need to know before you start your first day of work. When do you report? What time do you be there? What's the dress code? Make sure you understand those different types of things. Who do you report to? But ask some questions once you've accepted the job offer so that your first day of work goes as smoothly as possible. You're going to be required to complete an I-9 form and present one with lots of different government type documents that'll be able to show that you're able to be employed at that position. An I-9 form can be found on page 144 of your textbook. Go ahead and you can take a look at that. It's going to look very, very much like a lot of other employment forms that you guys have possibly filled out in the past, or maybe you filled out with your parents in the past. Don't let it confuse you. Make sure to ask questions if you have some about those different types of forms so that you do get them filled out correctly. And accepting the job offer is really, really easy. Rejecting a job offer oftentimes is not quite as easy. And potentially an employer can make a job offer right at the end of the interview. You need to, it's okay to go ahead and let that employer know that you need a little bit of time to consider your options. Not too much time. You don't want to put them off for a month or anything like that, but a couple of days is definitely, well within the wheelhouse there. Don't be afraid to ask them for a little bit of time, so that you can consider all of your options. Sometimes you may choose not to accept the offer that they've given you. Make sure that you either call them or in person, let the employer know that you're not accepting the job offer. Thank them for their time. Be very polite. Be very respectful. Never burn bridges in this job hunt process. We've talked about that before. You never know if or when you'll be right sitting across from that same person, that same interviewer later on in life, and potentially looking for another job within that company. And still, even if you do reject the job offer, it's still a good idea to follow up with a thank you letter, thanking them for their time and the opportunity. So there it is. That is lesson 6.2 in a nutshell. Again, I went through it relatively quickly because the last video that I tried to upload to YouTube failed to upload because of the amount of time it took. So hopefully you've got what you need out of there. Go ahead and take a look at section 6.2 notes. It is posted in your Google Classroom. And again, continue checking the Google Classroom for assignments. I have posted a number of them. Take a look at the due dates. It's kind of up to you when you want to get those done. As far as, if you want to work ahead, you certainly can work ahead, but it's ideally try to keep up with the work. I know this isn't a perfect situation, but I'm posting just a couple, a small assignment on each day. Feel free to shoot me an email if you have any questions. I hope everything's running smoothly. Stay safe, stay home, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you back in the classroom soon.